Cover crop return on investment. 4 years ago, those were the words that kicked off my time on social media. Now, granted, those videos are, lacking a little bit, but you know what they say, practice makes perfect. And since then, my videos have gotten, marginally better. But since it's my social media anniversary, I think that it's time to go back to my roots. Go back to where it all started. And let's talk about cover crops. And not just saving the whales, saving the world, but how you pay for it. Because as my dad told me at one point in time, it doesn't matter if you save the world if you can't pay for it. If you go bankrupt in the process, you're not saving anything. So come with me on a walk through our cover crop as we talk cover crop return on investment. I'm Tyler Tobald. Welcome to JTAC Farms. Right quick before I get started, if you like this video, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up, maybe even a comment, share it with a friend, share it with an enemy, and please don't forget, hit the subscribe button and that little bell icon. Back to the video. Here on JTAC Farms, we have been using cover crops consistently now for 15 years. And as you can kind of tell behind me, the bread and butter of our cover crops is the vaunted multi-species cover crop blend. This year, our multi-species cover crop blend has 27 different things in it. I know, it's quite the list. Here it is right here. But that's nothing compared to what's out in this field. This field, I have 55 different things, which seems a bit crazy, and you're not wrong. It is. Pretty much just did it for fun. I've got a whole other video about it. I'll have it linked down below. And this year is also the greatest cover crop we've ever grown in the 15 years that we've been doing cover crops. Like 2025 will, for the foreseeable future, be the benchmark that I measure all of our future cover crops against. So I can find something that does better than this. Like, we've grown some great cover crops before, but this one by far is just tremendous. Even with the armyworm pressure we had this year, the amount of forage that we have across the farm and all of our different cover crop fields is absolutely tremendous, and the cows are gonna love this. But things haven't always been this awesome, fun, whatever you want to call it. When we first started cover crops, things were kind of tough. We did the same thing that every other farmer tries to do when they first start experimenting with cover crops. We were trying to figure out how to adapt them to our crop rotation and what we were already doing. And after about a year or two of doing that, we realized that it wasn't the cover crops problem. It was us that was having the problem. And at that point, we took our crop rotation, we wadded it up, threw it in the trash can, and we started over with a blank piece of paper with cover crops right in the middle. And we designed our crop rotation to work around cover crops. So to kind of walk you through what we do now, all of our crop ground is split a third. So a third of it is wheat. And then after wheat, during the time it would be chem fallowed to go to a fall crop, like either milo or corn. That's when we put the multi-species cover crop in, right behind the wheat after we harvest it. Then after the milo or corn, sometimes we'll put some triticale behind that, depending on the year. Then after that goes to beans. And then as soon as we harvest the beans, we plant wheat in the bean stubble, and then we just rinse and repeat ad nauseum. So every year, 2 out of every 3 of our crop acres is getting grazed. We're getting the cows back out into our fields. And wouldn't you know it, cows is the perfect segue, because that's where we're going to get started. It's like I designed the script for this or something. Cows are where we're going to get started when we talk about return on investment for your cover crop. Now, I did forget to mention this earlier, but all the cover crops that you see here on JTAC Farms are 0% funded by any sort of federal program. It is a point of pride for my dad and I that we have figured out how to make this work, how to make it profitable for ourselves, by ourselves, without any other financial help. Because we want to do this. We want to make this work. but it has to make money. It can't just be another expense. Farmers have too many expenses as it is right now to have just another hit to the budget. Now, a cover crop is a positive return on investment. So let's talk about cows and what they do to the bottom line. Now you may be thinking to yourselves, well, obviously, cattle are sky high right now. Cattle prices are the highest they've ever been, ever. Well, fun fact, we've been positively cash flowing this with cattle before cattle went sky high. And the place that we start first on our journey of return on investment is chopping silage, or in our case, the lack thereof. In 2021 and 2022, we did not chop any silage here on the farm. 0 acres of silage grown. In 23 and 24, the only reason why we chopped any silage at all is because we were in a horrific drought and the corn failed. So we figured, what the heck? Chop it, chuck it in the silo, tie up the excess nitrates with triticale cover crop, and we move on with our day. And that's exactly what we did. Now, think about that for a second. If you can go a year or two without having to chop silage because you're using such little silage, imagine not having that extra bill, because I don't know about you, but the chopping bills around here never seem to get any smaller. Nowadays, it's around $100 to $150 an acre just to chop it. That's insane. That's a lot of money. Now, with high cattle prices, you can justify some of that a lot better than you have in the past. However, I don't like writing that check. Not in the slightest. Plus, you have all the time it takes to prep the silos, all the wear and tear on your equipment while you're packing the silos, pushing the silage, and everything else. Now that you've chopped it and packed it, now you got to feed it. You got to get it out of the silo. You got to get it to the cows. So you got to haul it in your mixer wagon and pull it with a tractor or feed truck or whatever. Have you priced new equipment for that lately? It's insane. I did it a while back just for funsies, and I about fainted. The cost of equipment now is just absolutely insane. So every single hour that you put on your equipment is just more and more expensive nowadays in order to either fix or replace it. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Before you chop it, throw it in a silo, and then dig it back out and go haul it back to your cows again, you got to grow the stuff first. What is corn silage a bag now? About $250? Well, depending on where you're at, that's like $20-25 an acre just in seed. And that's not even talking about the fertility program. Starter, fertilizer, just regular nitrogen, whatever. If you haven't priced it yet, you might want to sit down first before you do that. Prices for that are getting a bit ridiculous. Now, what if I told you that there's possibly a cheaper option? The seed for this cover crop per acre was under $30 an acre. For 27 things, we paid $29.82 an acre in seed. Now, in full transparency, I live close enough to Green Cover Seed up in Bladen, Nebraska. They're the original gangsters of cover crop seed. They are the best in the business, and being close enough to them allows me to drive our big grain truck up to them, get loaded up in bulk, and come back with it, so I'm not having to pay freight and bagging and anything like that. So that does help on my end. And of course, you've also got the cost of planting, but you also have the cost of planting for corn silage, so let's just say, for argument's sake, that those two cancel each other out. Now that we've grown our cover crop, or we've grown our corn, we got to feed the cows. All right, so we're back to digging it, we're chopping it, packing it, digging it out of the silage, throwing it in the wagon, taking it to your cows. So you've got all your equipment costs. You've also got your people costs. What does your people cost? Do you have to hire a guy to run your feed wagon? What does it cost you per hour to go feed your cows 3 to 4 hours a day? And if you tell me it doesn't cost you anything, well, then you are some seriously cheap labor at $0 an hour, and I would be more than happy to hire you, and I'll pay you double. Imagine if you only had to feed silage for, 47 days, because that's what we did last year. For 47 days, we fed silage, and we weren't even feeding at full capacity for most of those days. We started calving our spring herd out on cover crop, and as they would be getting pair bonded and tagged and everything else get a little bigger, we'd move them into the pasture where they could spread out. Then we'd feed them in there, and as the season progressed, more and more pairs went into the pasture. The feeding rate went up. So when we first started, we were at like a 2-3% feeding capacity. Like, it was barely worth the trouble to load the wagon full of silage. You just could almost bucket it over to them. But for 17 days, we were at 100% feeding capacity. Like, we were feeding pretty much the entire herd every day. That is hardly any time at all. Now, juxtapose this from back when I was younger. Right now, probably 2 weeks ago, we would have been feeding weaned calves and starting to supplement our cows a little bit because, we did have some milo stocks to graze, but that was about it. Grazing season didn't last very long. Nowadays, grazing season lasts a lot longer. Now, before commodity prices tanked, I would have said that those corn silage acres could be made into cash crop acres. And those would cash flow far better because you could still feed your cows with your cover crop without having to have the silage. Right at this exact moment in time, that does not hold true. Commodity prices, if you haven't been following, suck right now. So cash flowing silage is a little bit easier to do. But you know what's even easier to do than silage? I'll give you a hint. We've been talking about it for like the last 10 minutes now. That's right, cover crop. When grazing season ends in the pastures, grazing season begins out in the cover crops. We will wean the calves and they will go straight into the cover crop. For the last 5 years now, we haven't had to feed silage to our weaned calves. They go straight to the cover crop. They get the good stuff. Matter of fact, in the not too distant future, they're going to be out here where I am right now, getting their fill of whatever the heck they want to eat. So by feeding all of our calves all through the fall, all into the winter, into the spring on cover crop, that is so much less feeding we've had to worry about. You start to see where I'm going here. Now, I'm not saying this is going to work exactly everywhere. If you get 19 feet of snow in the winter, that might be a bit of an issue. However, for where I am here in Kansas, and for some folks I know in Missouri, Nebraska, a couple other places, this works quite well. Okay, I think we've hit the cow side of this thing aplenty. Lots of grazing. Less expense from chopping, all of that good stuff, okay? Now let's talk about nutrients, because as I alluded to earlier, fertility prices, fertilizer, starter, whatever, is insane right now. If you look them up, it's almost worse than looking up what a new tractor costs. You're going to want to sit down, or at least ask them to take you out to dinner first before you pre-order that. But what would you say if I told you it was possible to, even if you couldn't completely replace your fertility program, to help grow some of your own fertilizer with the same thing that you feed your cows with? Well, here's part of our answer right here. This plant here that's nearing the end of its life cycle is called sun hemp. Not that kind of hemp. It's a different kind. Distant cousin, typically grown in India. Really long growing season, so you can't eat it. There's no way to make seed with it here in the United States. This is perfect for a warm season cover crop here in Kansas. Loves the heat. Grows really well, grows really tall. This is actually some of the shorter stuff. And it can create its own nitrogen fertilizer in the ground if the seed is inoculated. Right down here we have a field pea. Great source of protein for cows, also makes its own nitrogen. Now we also have some mung beans. cowpeas, leftover soybeans, all that make their own nitrogen in the ground. On a typical year, we'll roll over anywhere between 35 to 70 pounds of extra organic nitrogen from this cover crop. Depends on, how good the growth is, type of ground and stuff like that. It varies a little bit. This year, I expect those numbers to be significantly higher just because of all the extra growth we've gotten from the late season rains and the fact that it hasn't froze hard yet. Typically, we have had at least a frost or 2 or 3, if not a hard freeze by now. Today is October 24th, 2025, by the way. And we haven't had that. So this stuff is still growing, which means it's still making nodules on those roots. It's still releasing that acid. It's doing everything to keep making more nitrogen. I'm hoping to do some more soil tests on this later, after the cows come through here. Then on top of your nitrogen and phos, you also have the nutrient scavengers out here. Your brassicas, your radishes, your turnips. They're both out here. I have smart radishes, which love those. They do horizontal brace roots so that the tuber stays more in the ground and doesn't push up. Helps break open hard pans, goes really, really deep down in the soil profile and pulls those nutrients from deep down below and gets them up in the tissues of the plant right next to the surface. Because there's going to be something that's going to be coming by pretty quick. Chew on that. And that's cows. The cows are helping even more. They're going to eat those plants, these things that have brought those nutrients back up closer to the surface in their own tissues and stuff like that. The cows are going to eat all of that. And then out of every north pointed cow, something comes out the south end. And those nutrients get deposited right back in our soil. Right there in that top layer, ready and available for the next cash crop. But wait, the fun isn't over yet, because on top of all of those things getting you those nutrients, you also have your deep tap-rooted stuff, like the sunflowers, your African cabbage, the radishes. Those are going to break open your hard pans in your soil and improve water infiltration. More water going down into your profile and staying there instead of running off of your dirt. And speaking of keeping water in your soil, all this cover crop, all this, getting the cows out here and everything helps raise your organic matter levels. For every % higher organic matter you get, that's an extra 20,000 gallons per acre of storage capacity that you get in your soil. Here in Kansas, where sometimes the rains are a bit few and far between, that extra storage capacity can be a real lifesaver sometimes. And of course, when you have all of this root growth, all of these happy growing plants out here, erosion, never heard of her. The dust bowls that we keep seeing in western Kansas, not a thing if your ground's covered. I despise erosion, not just because of the environmental toll it takes on everything, but when all that dirt leaves and goes someplace else, my nutrients are going with it. Whether they're blowing away, washing away, I'm greedy. I'm cheap like that. Whatever you want to call it, I want my nutrients, the ones that I paid for, to stay in my soil right here. So I'm going to do everything I can to try to reduce losses to erosion. And this is a big part of that. Okay, so we've talked about cows and nutrients. Let's talk about everybody's favorite thing, chemical application. This cover crop is planted into wheat stubble that would typically be chem fallowed. There's a lot of that around here. Chem fallow is where you just spray the wheat stubble, keep it clean before next spring, April, May time, you're planting your corn or your milo. Around here, that means at least 2 trips of herbicide, if not 3. Got a neighbor that is just obsessed with keeping his wheat stubble super duper clean. He ran 4 applications of herbicide across that field. Now, we're not even going to talk about, the effects of running that much herbicide, whatever. That's neither here nor there. I want to focus on the money side of things. Even if you own your own sprayer, there is costs associated with running your spray rig that many times across a field. This was sprayed right after we took the weed off, just so it was cleaned up enough to plant the cover crop through it and it not have to really compete with a whole lot. Corn silage, that's at least 2 applications of herbicide. You got your pre and your post. You want it to try to be as clean as possible so you have the highest quality forage possible. That's that much more application you're having to do. Kind of see where I'm going with this. Yes, we're using less chemical, but we're also spending less time in a sprayer, putting less hours on a sprayer, less expenses while still getting all of the good that our cows need to be fat and happy. Because just like everything else, chemical keeps going up too. Because of course it does, right? Now, I am not going to claim that this patch of cover crop is completely weed free, although I am looking around right now and I'm not seeing anything. I did walk past the water hemp earlier, but there is one weed that I can not remember when it disappeared, but I haven't seen it in years now. Probably near 5 years that we haven't seen this. Mare's tail or horsewhip, whatever you want to call it. I don't know when it disappeared, but it was something that we fought constantly. It's gone now. We haven't had to fight that in our beans or our Milo or anything in literal years. I don't know what in our cover crops is keeping it at bay. I don't know how we've done it. I just know that we have, and that makes me very happy because that's just one less herbicide-resistant weed that I have to deal with. Alrighty, chemical side was pretty quick, wasn't it? I didn't really want to dive too much into the environmental side of things because then I'd really start a fight, and well, I don't want to make this video 3 hours long. So we're just going to move on. Earlier I was talking about having someone feed that silage to the cows. How much does it cost to hire someone to do that feeding for you, or how much does it cost you per hour to go feed those cows? Well, right now let's look beyond just the monetary cost. What's your time worth to you? Because I don't know about you, time is a very, very precious commodity for me on the farm. I am largely a one-man band, and I have to be very, very intentional with every minute of my day to ensure that I try to do it as efficiently as possible. Less time spent in the tractor is more time than I'm spending doing other things. It doesn't take long to put up hot wire. Usually about a week's worth of work, and we've got all the hot wire up around the farm. Fields mowed, everything set and ready, fencers on and hot. Just got to move some cows around. It's really not that hard. Then once they're out on the cover crop, it's just every now and then you check on them, make sure they're still in, bring them some water if need be, or if you've got a pond nearby, all that kind of good stuff. Make sure they're happy and content, and then you're free to work on whatever else you'd like to work on. For me, it was building some pipe pens here on the farm. Some different sorting pens, some holding pens, some catch pens, different things that if I was spending hours every day in a tractor, I don't know if I'd have had the time for. I didn't have to hire someone to come and build those pens. I built them largely myself. I rebuilt our own air seeder, with the exception of this last time. Had Quality Drills do that. That was a major rebuild. But most rebuilds in the air seeder, I do that myself because I'm not having to spend hours every day in the feed tractor as well as checking calves and everything else. They are happy and content on the cover crop, and as long as they're happy and content and watered and has some mineral, whatever, that's more time back to me to work on other projects on the farm. Building my own solar fences, taking my wife out on a date that doesn't involve a tractor, spending some time with my little boy and, showing him all the cool stuff on the farm, going on little adventures to the park or the soda fountain, whatever. It's more time back to me. And time is more precious than any commodity. On top of those things, you also have that this is a tremendous habitat for game birds. I'm not talking just for conservation. I'm talking for the sportsmen out there. You may not like hunting, and that's fine. I do. And I have a lot of folks that do as well. I love to provide my family for my family in that fashion. Hunting pheasants in cover crop has been my go-to for the last decade now. And I do much better in a multi-species cover crop like this than anybody is going to do in the walk-in hunting or, heaven help him, Milo stubble. And the year before last, all of my deer were taken either in a cover crop or immediately next to it. And they were passing through it. Cover crop is tremendous for your wildlife. They will love it. And now, hunting through something this tall this year might be a bit more difficult to get a clean bead on a ditch chicken. But I got a couple spots that aren't quite this tall, then I'm definitely going to give it a whirl. Pretty awesome, right? Grow cow feed, get free nitrogen and other nutrients and stuff like that. Get free time back. Heck yeah. You're ready to do it exactly like how I do it, right? Well, if your answer is heck yes, well, then you're wrong. See, that's the beauty. And it's a double-edged sword, really, with regenerative agricultural practices. That this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. This works for my family, for our operation, for our environment, for our purposes. It works amazing, and I absolutely love it. I just wish commodity prices didn't suck so bad. But, like I alluded to earlier, if your environmental context is a little different, like up north and you get 19 feet of snow in the winter, maybe grazing them out on a cover crop over the winter in snow drifts deep enough to hide a battleship might not be a great idea. This is simultaneously one of my favorite things about regenerative agricultural practices and one of the most troubling things. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, really, because an answer for one situation is not going to be the same answer as for a different situation. It's like the world's worst math quiz, where every answer or every question has its own answer, and everyone could be wrong at any given time, or anyone could be right at any given time. Sounds fun, doesn't it? That's what makes it a little bit tricky. You got to figure out what works for you and for your area, for your needs. Like, if you're bringing cows out onto this, what you going to do for water? Do you have wells? Do you have rural water? Do you have ponds nearby? Are you willing to haul water? These are things that you have to think through before you just go hog wild into something. Here, we've got a pond near enough that I can just open up the fence and they go back and forth. They get their water, they come up, they chew on some cover crop, they go back. There's an old pond over here that if we do get some late season rains, it'll put enough water in it to be useful while they're out here grazing. Stuff like that. Or a couple fields where we haul water to. Like the great Keith Burns says, cover crops are not as simple as a label on the back of a jug. It's a quote that I absolutely love, and I will continue saying ad nauseum until the end of time. And you're going to make some mistakes when you start going down this road of cover crops. Once you finally have that mindset change where you're like, okay, I want to do this, I can do this, I'm going to make it work, I'm going to figure it out. Be prepared to screw up a time or two. And some people are going to point and laugh at you. They have at me. on numerous occasions. I always like to say that my list of failures is far taller than my list of successes. But I've learned any more from that one failure, one of those failures, than I have from that entire pile of successes. Your first year, you may not get the right kind of stuff in your cover crop blend, or your growing conditions may not be the perfect thing, and your cover crop may look a little lackluster. The last few years have been horrifically dry out here in my area of Kansas. Horrible drought, yet we still pushed ahead with our cover crops anyways, and they were, well, hold on a second. Let me find the worst part of this patch that I can find, and I'll show you what our best cover crop looked like last year. That's what our best cover crop looked like last year. Lots of gaps, lots of spaces, really short stuff. This is an area where I have a bit of a pH issue that I need to address, as opposed to this glorious growth over here. This is the first year that we've actually planted all of our cover crop without any additional fertilizer. Zero, exactly zero extra fertilizer. No starter, no nitrogen, just all of that, all of those credits that we have rolled over all of these years, kind of like an investment that keeps rolling over compound interest. It's finally built up enough that where we planted this, and most people that look at it think I threw 30 to 50 pounds of nitrogen on out here. I didn't need to. It was already here. Just had to tap into it and use it. Now, all these things that you need to be wary of are one of the reasons why I always say start small. When you go down this road of cover crops and regenerative agricultural practices, start small. Find that 5 acre, that 8 acre, 10 acre patch that you're grown every time you got to go plant it or harvest it or whatever, because the combine doesn't fit right, or your 24 row planter doesn't fit in it good, whatever excuse you have. That's the patch you start on. That is the patch that you go full Cortez on and you burn the boats behind you. And on that patch, you go just all out. Be bold, be intentional, and take notes while you're doing it, and try every sort of thing that you think could work for your area. And then you will start to get your baseline. You'll see, oh, hey, so that worked, but that didn't. But this could have worked a little better if I'd have got it in earlier. But this also, you will start seeing what works, what doesn't, and then you can start expanding that more into your operation. Be bold and be intentional, but start small. You don't want to just, this is a common mistake that aggravates me to no end, because I see it all the time out here. Some guys will get some government money for prevent plant or whatever to plant a cover crop. And they'll go, all right, heck yes, here's some government money, make me a cover crop, and throw it out there without any plan of what they're doing. They have no plan of how to deal with it, how to manage it, because management is by far one of the toughest things and most important things with a cover crop. And then it doesn't work and they blame the cover crop. It wasn't the cover crop's fault. It was yours, because you couldn't manage it properly, because you didn't have a plan. You don't know what you're doing. You've never messed with it before, and you decided to go all the way into the deep end of the pool to start swimming? That doesn't make any sense. So start small and learn, and then get bigger and grow. And when you're doing all of this trial and error, ask some questions. A lot of us regen guys will be more than happy to talk with you. I would talk to a random person at the grocery store about cover crops. I literally did that today. While I was getting fried chicken, I was talking to somebody about all of our pumpkins and gourds and stuff like that in the cover crop here. A lot of us are more than happy to share what we're doing with other people if it means having more folks adopt some of these practices. Once you've done your learning, your trial and error, you'll start to see a path forward, like we did, to a place where that cover crop stops becoming an experiment or just another expense and starts becoming an actual cash flowing entity, just like any other crop on your farm. It may take a few years. You will make some mistakes. But in the end, remember, fortune favors the bold. Hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section. Thanks for stopping by.